Indonesian state-owned enterprises are massive businesses. They are regarded as one of the economic drivers of the economy of Indonesia. For the past 5 years, from 2016 to 2021, these state-owned enterprises have contributed trillions of Indonesian rupiahs back to the government. From 2020 to 2021, the collective revenues received are estimated to be over 90 trillion Indonesian rupiahs. That is over $5.7 billion in total dividends alone. This does not even take into account the other form factors such as employment contribution, overall economic contribution, and so on. So just how big is the state-owned enterprise to the economy of Indonesia? Well, as of 2020, there are around 114 government-owned businesses that are currently operating in 12 sectors, 20 of which are officially listed in the Indonesian Stock Exchange. Therefore, only a few of them are financially available. Being listed in the official stock exchange means that they are, by law, required to report their financial data every quarter and every year. Furthermore, as of the current government position, the Minister for Indonesia's state-owned enterprise is Erick Thohir, an Indonesian businessman who is also famous for his ownership of many international athletic teams and executive positioning at major media companies. So, who are the largest state-owned enterprises that are currently pursuing economic contribution by the numbers? Well, discussing the largest will land us into the companies listed on the official Indonesian Stock Exchange. One of the largest state-owned enterprises is known as the Bank Rakyat Indonesia, a financial institution that has over 4,000 branches all across the archipelago country. It serves over 30 million retail clients and has over 125,000 employees, a massive economic driver indeed. The company itself is valued at over $45 billion in the Indonesian Stock Exchange and has sales exceeding $12 billion. The other large institution listed publicly is known as Telkom Indonesia, valued at over $25 billion and is the largest telecommunications provider in the country. Telkom Indonesia employs more than 25,000 people and has revenues of nearly $10 billion every year. These two state-owned enterprises alone are valued together at over $70 billion. That is incredibly massive, and the fact that they are just amongst the many out there, the many 114 companies, is absolutely insane. One company, however, stands out for being the largest ever yet. Not being publicly listed on the Indonesian Stock Exchange, this is known as Pertamina, the oil and gas business and supplier of the country. It is a company that reports nearly $60 billion in total sales and was once ranked in 2013 as the 133rd on the Fortune Global 500 list after it reported sales of over $70 billion. However, since it is not a publicly listed company, the total market value is not estimated properly. But if it ever was, it would undoubtedly be massive. Now, these three together have sales of over $80 billion, which is an economic contribution that ensures financial stability for millions of people in the country. They enable the citizens to have a proper banking institution, to have reliable telecommunication services, and their own oil and gas company. Yet, even though that they are an economic driver for Indonesia, we must also try to balance out the need for a privatization program. This is a lacking instrument in the country. In simpler terms, the government still wants to control these mega corporations, with little to give to the private sector. Although it is difficult to say whether a privately owned business is better than a publicly owned business, since these two cases have proven that they both work, such as the case of China and the case of the United States. However, arguably the largest issue for the Indonesian economy today is corruption, and it is always found that having a state-owned enterprise increases corruption. It is a very simplistic explanation. Due to the nature of state-owned enterprises, they are open for kickbacks, open for unexplained payments, and open for undeserved positions. And if the government wants to ensure that systemic corruption is negated, it may choose to privatize their state-owned enterprises and ensure that the markets will do their job properly. We should also not forget that even if the government chooses to privatize these companies, they will still receive large contributions in the form of taxes. One final factor that we can address is how does the government actually make money from these corporations? From 2020 to 2021, we have cited earlier that these state-owned enterprises have contributed around $5.7 billion or 90 trillion Indonesian rupiahs. Well, the basic sense of how they receive the money is just from dividends. This means that for every dollar or rupiah a state-owned company makes, they give a percentage of it back to the government, roughly between less than 1% to as much as 10% every year. This means that the company itself also retains a fair share of profit back to the business, and this also means that the retained earnings, depending on the share of the government ownership, still belongs to them. Therefore, they can easily make more money out of a government-owned enterprise if they need to. In some cases, they can sell the company itself to the private sector. But anyway, these are just the very basic sense of how state-owned enterprises work. Do let us know what you think. Does the government hold too much power in the market, or should they privatize some of their vehicles? Thanks for watching.